Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show, where we celebrate every single day the people who are working so hard to make Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. Hey, I wanted to just mention before we go to Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune, we've had a really good week this week on the expanded show that went into the Delta and the Jackson markets. Fofo Gillich joined me, and we had an hour-long conversation that encompassed a lot. But we talked about why Biloxi, specifically Biloxi, was important to this region and why it's important to the rest of the state. Got into gaming, of course, and the culture and heritage of Biloxi. We get, obviously, the military, Keesler Air Force Base, and all that. If you missed that, you can go to Facebook, either SuperTalk Mississippi, SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast, the Ricky Matthews Show Facebook pages. You can go to your favorite podcast. I use Spotify to have access to the Ricky Matthews Show or to SuperTalk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews. But the bottom line is we're there however you want to. You can go to the SuperTalk YouTube page to get it as well. Also had a terrific conversation with Ivan and Kelly Spinner about their development efforts in coastal Mississippi and a number of other terrific conversations. So if you missed those, you can go to social media and we can have and you can enjoy being part of the conversations if you missed it here on SuperTalk. Now, without any further ado, let's move over to our friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune. He's on the Hall of Fame, NFL Hall of Fame selection committee. As I've said many times before, he's won just about every award. He's written all the definitive books that you can get about the Saints. And on top of that, he's just finished writing a book with Steve Gleason about Steve Gleason's life. And that will be coming out, I think, in April. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah. We're actually in the process of putting together some blurbs, for the cover, soliciting people, trying to get some of Steve's friends and people in his orbit to contribute to the book. So it's exciting right now.
I can only imagine who those possibilities are because he's connected with so many amazing people during this time of challenge, why he's inspired all of us with how to live, even with a very difficult situation. Anyway, welcome back to the show, man. It's been a fun week for Saints fans because everything seemed to work well against the Colts. After you and I talked the last time we were together about that teams go through storming and then they form, then they eventually perform. There was so much storming going on in so many different ways. You and I talked about that last week, but they certainly did seem to form this last game, didn't they?
Yeah, it's a good a good analogy and a good process because to describe what the Saints kind of went through, their offensive players and coaches kind of all brainstorming and getting together in private sessions and meetings and FaceTime calls to try to put their heads together and come up with solutions of, what's going wrong with the offense, how can they fix it? And look, early returns on that work were positive. Now, it came against a team that, is struggling defensively, was really missing some key players and had some players leave during the game. So you have to temper that enthusiasm a little bit because it's not going to be that easy every week against better teams, but it's a step in the right direction for the Saints, no question.
But you think about, several factors, and we'll break it all down. But right off the bat, Carr plays better. You said from the very beginning of the season through last week, and you'll say it again today, that this team will succeed or fail based on the play of the offensive line. Offensive line, they've made some changes. It's playing better. They spread the ball out. Play calling seemed to be a lot more creative. You got Taysom Hill in the red zone. You said, why don't they use him more in the red zone? And they did. It was just good to see a lot of correction that happened. But it does come back to the play of the offensive line. We know that Carr, when he's under pressure, he gets skittish. And when he's not under pressure and you give him time to make decisions, he can drop some dimes. And so the offensive line is critical, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the engine of the offense. And, they struggled early, and they would be the first to tell you they weren't playing as well as, weren't playing to their standard. And that was probably their best all-around game of the season against the Colts. Now, again, it wasn't against a dominant front. They weren't playing the Tennessee Titans or the, San Francisco 49ers. They were playing kind of a bad front, so they should have dominated, and they did. So it's good to see that. I do think it's encouraging that some of the moves that they've made, obviously going with Andres Pete at left tackle. I mean, I don't think anybody thought that move would be permanent, but it looks like it's going to be permanent for a while. They're getting James Hurst back this week, the veteran that Doug Marrone, one of his favorites. I think they're going to plug him in right now at left guard and keep Pete at left tackle. So that shows you how much they think of how well Pete's playing. And that's a veteran group now. Those guys have played a lot of snaps together. And that 5 is who I expect to start against the Bears.
Well, you talk about Pete, Andres Pete. This guy's been with the Saints, had some challenges along the way. But at the end of the day, man, to drop him into that position, the blindside guy, he has really played well in that position. Yeah,
I mean, they've seemed to figured out like a system of when they use help for him, when they don't, and it's a very sophisticated blocking system. Obviously, it's not the same every time. And I think Carr's also figured out his offensive line. That takes a little while for the quarterback to realize what he's got up front and when he needs to get rid of the ball in certain routes. So it's kind of all starting to come together. But, again, I want to temper all of this because I know I always sound like the wet blanket, Ricky. But, I mean, the Colts were bad. I mean, they had one player out there, the Saints just totally exploited, a guy that was a street free agent. And what I would say to that is it does show you, though, when the Saints have had those injuries, a guy like Ike Adams come in and played well. So it speaks to, everybody's going to have injuries. What do you have behind your starters? The Saints have endured some of those things and not had the disaster that the Colts had. I mean, the Saints, every one of those big plays came against this one corner who really, really struggled. He also was the guy that fell down trying to tackle Taysom Hill. I mean, he just was bad. And the Saints took advantage of it, but it's not going to be that easy every week.
Yeah, I realize it definitely is not going to be that easy. And we left some plays on the table. It's interesting, Michael Thomas on those 2 passes that were kind of thrown behind him that's behind him. He says I should have caught those. Those usually passes that I could catch. But of course, Carr says he just missed it. But you start tightening up stuff like that. Chris Olave was interviewed this week. He reflected back on the speeding ticket and the conversations that he had with Carr, and he reflected about how when he looked up, they had been actually planning that particular play for a couple of weeks, and then suddenly, they call it and it hits him in the face. That's very unusual for Olave, though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, that's part of the frustration right now with the offense is they just can't get Olave and Carr synchronized very well. I mean, they're trying. He leads the team in targets. I mean, they're trying to get him the ball. He's got to be their number one receiver. I mean, he's the guy. Mike Thomas is more of a possession receiver right now at this stage of his career, and Shaheed's more of a, the deep threat. Those are the roles. And Olave, they're spending a lot of time trying to get him the ball, and they've got to be more efficient. I think his numbers are among the least efficient of any receiver in the league, how many times he's been targeted, how many catches he has. And it's not one thing, right? One play, he messes up. The next play, he's open, and Carr overthrows him. So it's been a little bit of a work in progress for those two.
He said they've been working on it. He actually, Olave said in that interview, said that I've been in a slump for the past month. And, he owns up to it and can't wait for this week. Just judging him, just his state of mind, his body posture, what I could see in his face. He seemed to be a guy who was ready to turn the corner. He didn't seem to be, reflecting back too much. I think he really is looking forward to Sunday.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, he's a guy they're counting on, right? I mean, he's their number one receiver. He's a former first-round draft pick, and he had such a good rookie year. And he's in a little bit of a sophomore slump, and that happens. It happens all over the league. And the Saints are going to need him to step up and be that guy. And look, the knock on Olave coming out of Ohio State was he was not very physical. He's not a very big guy. And you can see teams, that's how they combat him. They get physical with him at the line of scrimmage. You see him sometimes, like against the Colts, he catches the ball and runs out of bounds. He goes down really quickly. He's not a guy that's going to be like Mike Thomas that looks for contact. He's trying to avoid it. And that's something I think is part of his evolution and maturation as a receiver in the NFL.
And it's amazing when you think about Mike Thomas, and we're talking about him And the way that we're talking about him, and when you put it within the context of his injuries and how much he played over the past 3 years, et cetera, and watch him today, he's become sort of the steady Eddie, man. I mean, it's a reliable guy out there, still catching violently, not afraid of getting hit. It's incredible what he's doing, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a big year for him, right? He's been out for 3 years, and he's their possession guy, the go-to guy on third down, making those tough catches over the middle, and he's a big part of their offense. They need him to be that guy that can help move the chains.
Okay, when we come back, we'll talk about running backs. There's some real good points there beyond just Alvin Kamara. And we'll talk a little bit more about the defense as well. The slow starts, they say they're going to try to resolve that. We'll see you after this with Jeff Duncan. Welcome back to the Citizens Bank studio. I'm thrilled to have them as a sponsor of this studio. They're doing such great work in the community, and thrilled to be in the Citizens Bank studio. We've got Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune. It was good to see them as far as the running backs, as I was mentioning, coming out. Alvin Kamara is playing well, but they're starting to spread the ball out a little bit, and you see some spirited running by people other than Alvin Kamara.
I thought that was one of the most encouraging aspects of the game the other day, to be honest with you, Ricky. I mean, I was more encouraged by the running game than I was the passing attack. Like I said, I expected them to move the ball through the air against that injury-riddled defense. But the running game is what, to me, opened my eyes. And like you said, it wasn't just Alvin Kamara. It was Jamal Williams, Kendre Miller had some nice runs. Obviously, Taysom Hill was a big catalyst there, leading them in rushing. If they can get that ground game going consistently, it's going to open up everything else in the passing attack, unlock that play-action passing system that Derek Carr likes so much. So we'll see if they can continue to do it. I think they have an opportunity this week against the Bears to continue to progress, but I think it helps having that offensive line healthy and intact and having that continuity up front, to kind of keep things rolling in the right direction. They've got to be able to run the ball. That's how Dennis Allen wants to play, and this team showed it against Indianapolis, at least its potential.
Well, it's interesting hearing Alvin Kamara talk about Taysom Hill. You know it's coming, but you can't do anything about it. This Taysom Hill, man, he's a freak. Yeah,
I don't think people I think we all kind of take him for granted, and I don't think we realize just how rare what we're seeing is. I mean, you just don't see another player. I tweeted out during the game, I think at one point he had 50, and he ended up with 63 rushing yards, threw a 44-yard pass, and then caught passes. So you just don't see any other player in the league capable of doing that at the highest level of the sport. He's just a rare athlete. Derek Carr was laughing yesterday saying how, he plays so violently and so physical, but yet he's always smiling. He's always kind of this all shucks grin on his face. It's kind of a contradiction. But yeah, he's a huge part of their offense, and I don't think anyone should take for granted, because we're not going to see this kind of athlete come through here again. He's 33 years old. It's not like he's a young pup. He did the mission like all the BYU players do, so he's a little older than most players for his age.
And his injuries and the surgeries that he's had and the difficulties that he's had and the fact that he's being able to keep it all together physically. I don't want to jinx him, but my goodness. You know what's interesting? He really is an old school player and a new school player all wrapped up in one guy. I mean, his ability to do so much is just incredible. Once he's run the ball 2 or 3 different times, it's inevitable that you're going to see a camera angle on him during the game, and there's going to be blood somewhere. Blood's on his jersey. He's got bruises on his arms. He's got, you can see where they've been trying to grab him and scratched him or, caused, some kind of welt somewhere on his arms. And it's not enough. You see these guys reach out and try to grab him with their arms. Boy, this guy, you cannot do arm tackling against this guy.
No, looking after games, we're in a locker room and he's got ice all over his body. He's trying to recover. I mean, he goes through a physical beating every game, and he's one touchdown reception away, Ricky, from being the first player in NFL history since Frank Gifford to catch at least 10 touchdown passes, run for 10 touchdowns, and throw for 10 touchdowns. That's how rare what we're seeing. I mean, how rare an athlete we're seeing. I mean, Frank Gifford back in the 60s.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. So
hey, listen,
it's unique.
When you see him in the locker room or when you see him at practice and get to interact with him, you mentioned the smile, but that is a permeating smile. That really tells who he is as a teammate. He's got to be fun to be around.
Yeah, he's kind of media shy. He's very humble, so he doesn't want to draw attention to himself, but he's always very friendly. It's just a matter of getting him to talk because he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. And I think that's why he's so beloved by teammates. And look, that's a credit to Sean Payton for recognizing him and bringing him in. I mean, they signed him off. He was undrafted and was cut by the Green Bay Packers. They were trying to slip him through the waiver wire. And Sean Payton recognized what a unique athlete he could be, got him, and, man, the rest is history. That's going to go down in history as one of the best signings in Saints history. And he's earning $10 million a year, and I know a lot of people were critical of that. That's a bargain, Ricky, a bargain in today's NFL for what he produces.
Hey, one other thing. I saw a photo from this past game in the locker room where Groupie was standing next to Taysom Hill. And I remember there was another play. I don't remember who it was, but first of all, that's not a good comparison because, here you have this physical specimen in Taysom, and Groupie is the last place you would expect to see someone of his physical stature is in an NFL locker room. But my goodness, Taysom is a meat of a dude.
Yeah, he's like a linebacker, almost like a defensive end. And what separates him from other players like that, because a lot of people used to compare him to Tim Tebow, right? Very similar style of quarterback, is that he's so much faster. That's what separates. That's what's unique about him. He's a linebacker with like running back, wide receiver speed. I mean, he's faster than Alvin Kamara, and I don't think people realize that. I mean, he's one of the faster players on the team. So that's why he's different than Tebow. Tebow couldn't run nearly as fast as Taysom Hill.
Hey, listen, I tell my son Jordan, who I watch the games with, I tell my son Jordan, I'm just waiting. It's just a matter of time. And maybe it's on a crossing route, or we're going to see Taysom break one for a long run, and people aren't going to be able to catch him. That seems inevitable.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, we were talking in also how they're going to get, I think, Juwan Johnson involved. They haven't done that very much right now. The tight end is the one facet of this offense that hasn't been unlocked. And I think in the next day or two, one of those next game or two, Juwan Johnson's going to have a big game, and so is Taysom Hill in the receiving area.
Yeah, Juwan Johnson, he came back. Did he get how many? I'll remember one pass.
One pass, but only targeted twice. They tried to squeeze one in the red zone to him. Yeah. But, I expect him to have a big game coming up soon.
Yeah, actually, Alvin Kamara's set of that pass in the red zone, where I think he was double covered and kind of pancaked. Alvin Kamara said, Juwan Johnson's got to catch that. That's he usually catches that ball.
Yeah. Carr fitted in there really well. It's a tough catch. But, look, everything was working against this Colts defense. They had a good game plan. Carr was on point. He had time, like you said. Again, that's a bad team they played. So let's see if this continues. I don't want to get too excited. Matter of fact, I had someone in the building text me on Tuesday and said, don't get carried away. We made a lot of mistakes in that game. We got to get a lot better. So that's why I'm trying to temper enthusiasm.
Now, in the short time we have left, last couple of games, the defense has started slow. They've had great second halves. They've been working on that. And it's interesting because when you see the breakdown, it's usually one or two missed assignments kind of, made things kind of get out of hand real quick.
Yeah, giving up big explosive plays early. We saw the big run by the Colts, and also had some penalties that have hurt them. Yeah, they look, they're still playing very well. They're number 5 in the entire NFL. They're ranked in the top 10 of most categories. But we expect more from this unit. I mean, it's healthy. Really, almost every starter is healthy, which is rare at this time of year. Matter of fact, Ricky, the Saints have to be one of the most healthy teams in the league. This time of year, usually you're missing 2 or 3 starters at the minimum, and the Saints have everyone. So it's very, things are kind of going their way. They got calls the other day in the game by the officials. There were a lot of those 50-50 reviews, and they went the Saints' way. Finally, some things are starting to, go in their favor for once.
We always talk about Marshawn Lattimore, but boy, Paulson Adebo, what a shutdown he has become.
That was the best game I've seen him play, no question. And, if he can come on and play at that level every week, then all of a sudden you feel really good about the secondary, which is probably the strength of the team right now. But that was really encouraging. I mean, he played lights out, not only in coverage, but also supporting the run. That's a big step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to see if they can continue to put it together. I know that when you look at, and you've said this many times, there have been plays that defense, if the opposing quarterback had seen that, it would have kind of changed the complexion of the game because some receivers were open and we're leaving some points on the table. But I think every game's going to have those situations. I don't care how good your team is, every game's going to have those situations. But if the Saints can continue to put it together, they could really unlock a series of wins here that could be significant for them.
To me, I mean, they've got to win this game against the Bears at home. That's a given. It's a no. They have to win that game, and they will, I think. Going to Minnesota before the bye, that's the game that I want to see. It's going to be difficult. They just traded for Josh Dobbs. It's a very hostile environment. That team's on the come. That game will be, I think, the one that I'm going to be watching to see if they can pull that win off and get to 6-4 at the bye week.
Well, Jeff, thank you for your time. I enjoyed visiting with you. It'd be fun to watch a game, and we'll see you next week, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Ricky. Have a great weekend, buddy.
You bet. From the Citizens Bank studio, have a great weekend, and we will we'll see you right after this break. See you after this break.